Christopher and just Chris. Kia ora. Thank you. I'll move in. I think. Do I have a second on this one? Councillor Ferry.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillors. My name is Christopher Turbot. I'm a policy planner and plans and places, and we have Craig, my team leader here, and we also have a representative from Watercare available if you have any questions in that regard. So this item is concerning a plan change application under clause 25. It's called Randwick Rise. If we pass on to the next, oh, I've got to do that, haven't I? So that's, which button is it?
That arrow on the right-hand side. I'm going to sign.
So the applicant, McConnell Developments Limited, is proposing to rezone about 30 hectares of land near Takanini. They're proposing to rezone it from future urban zone to the residential mixed housing urban zone, which is, as you know, the medium density zone in the operative Auckland unitary plan. Those diagrams show the existing yellow future urban zone on one side and the proposed mixed housing urban zone on the other. So 30 hectares is a reasonable size, but it's not one of our largest plan changes. In terms of decision making, you're probably already familiar with this, but I'll just run through it again. The council is required to consider the request, and it has some options that are set out prescriptively in the Act. So we can adopt the plan change and process as a council plan change. The council could accept the request as a private plan change and notify it. It would go on to submissions and hearings. The council could reject the request, or we could process it as a resource consent application. There's really no merit in adopting it as a council plan change, and this is common for most private plan changes. It's not particularly a comment on this one. Processing it as a resource consent would be inappropriate because it's a future urban zone that doesn't enable urban activity until there's a zone change. So that leaves either accepting or rejecting the request. Clause 25(4) of the RMA sets out limited grounds for rejection, and I won't list them all there, but I've just picked on the two that are actually relevant. And those are, it is not in accordance with sound resource management practice, or the request or part of the request will make the policy statement or plan inconsistent with Part 5 of the RMA. And what that latter part really means is it would be inconsistent with the regional policy statement or a national policy statement. So the case law is pretty clear that a course merits assessment is required. We don't need to go into the details and prove that every facet of the plan change is appropriate. That will be done later through a hearing process. So there are some things that are, at a course merits level, good about this plan change. It adjoins an existing residential area. It's not in a remote location, off in the countryside somewhere. Much, although not all of the bulk transport infrastructure exists. We've had a transport specialist run through it, and we're satisfied at a course merits level that there's enough supporting infrastructure there and that the applicant reasonably provide the local roads. In the short term, there's a local bus service that could potentially service the area. The council has a designation, or I should say knows a requirement for a frequent transport network alongside the plan change area, although that's subject to appeal currently. The land's gently sloping and it's generally suitable for medium density residential activity. And however, and just continuing on that sort of course level, it's in an area that's scheduled in the future development strategy for development in 2050 plus and is red flagged for flood hazards. Now, in regard to that latter matter, the flood hazards relate to the rather large Takanini floodplain. Now, the 30 hectares itself is actually not so susceptible to flooding or other natural hazards, so it's reasonably good in that perspective. But it does run off into the much larger Takanini floodplain, so if the area gets urbanised, the extra impermeable surfaces create extra runoff that has to be managed or mitigated one way or another. And just moving on that line and just jumping to the last bullet point, it's really not been possible to confirm that flood risk to existing properties in the flood downstream of the rest area will not be increased. There has been a lot of analysis and discussion going backwards and forwards between the applicant and Healthy Waters. And you've got Healthy Waters and flood resilience response and one of the attachments there. It's sort of kind of got to the point where there may theoretically be a solution, but we haven't really been able to confirm that that might actually be feasible in practice on the site. And by that, I don't mean a detailed design, I just mean it's feasible in principle. And we did suggest we take an extra time, maybe a few months, to try and sort that issue out, but the applicant wanted to proceed to the Clause 25 report. So the risk there is that there's over 600 properties in the existing floodplain downstream at various levels of risk. And the RPS is really quite blunt about increasing risk to existing properties. It just says no to increasing risk. And my view, it really would be kind of unsound to proceed where we can't at least confirm in principle that risk will not be increased. The other issues really relate to the infrastructure that Watercare operates. Watercare sort of develops its infrastructure planning in terms of the FDS, but also in terms of actual demand. They've looked at it, and the attachment that we've included sets out Watercare's points of view. They've stated quite clearly that they can't supply water until 2034 at the earliest, and we can't even be sure that it's 2034, it may be later than that. In some cases, applicants will identify alternative wastewater or water supplies, or say they will supply them through their own infrastructure developments. That hasn't happened in this case. The requester hasn't identified alternative supplies. Also, Watercare can't confirm the confidence that wastewater capacity is available ahead of the FDS timing based on their current information. They are doing a lot of modelling work to work out what capacities might be available, but there are also a lot of other plan change applications, developments going on in South Auckland, so all that capacity has to be allocated somewhere. Yeah. So my recommendation is really that the application be rejected. I have included as an attachment the material from the applicant, and in particular the letter from Ellis Gold, which sets out the applicant's point of view, why they think the application should be accepted. So that is there for your perusal. I've sort of come to a different point of view from the applicant, but of course you're entitled to come to your own point of view. And I've just noted that the requester can appeal the council's decision to the Environment Court, so they have recourse to another process after this. Thank you.
Thanks, Christopher. I think it seems very clear, but we'll just see if there's any questions. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, and thank you for all of the work on this. I just wanted to, and I understand Council's position. I'm losing my voice. It only happens in this room. Honestly. Is this the first test that we've had for the red flag areas in the FDS?
To my knowledge it is, but
Do you think, it's probably not even worth asking the question, would we have rejected it under the previous FDS without the red flags?
Well, I think the red flag area raises a warning sign that the flood risks have to be thoroughly investigated. There has been a lot of work on this done, so that part of it has been met. Probably that there are a lot of floodplains in Auckland, and this is one of the largest, but I think with any floodplain situation where you have existing development downstream, you'd require that research. It's just in this case we haven't been able to resolve the issue.
Because the mitigation that the developer might be able to put in might work for him, or them, but they could never put in a solution that is going to resolve the downstream into those broader floodplains in Takanini.
Well, Healthy Waters' advice is attached. They weren't, they didn't support the solution the applicant was providing. My view was that if we'd had more time, it might have been possible to get a solution that would at least show in principle that was feasible on that particular site. It's complicated by the fact we have a lot of other development proposals going through at the same time. Healthy Waters would prefer an integrated solution across all those areas that provided attenuation, but I think the applicant is entitled to have their own plan change area dealt with on its own merits, and that's the way I looked at it, and I wasn't convinced we could get to a solution in principle that would have no increase in risk downstream based on the information I've got at hand. And we all know what happens when existing risk that was put in floodplains at a much earlier stage in time gets subject to flooding. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. Doesn't seem to be any other questions, so I'll just get you to both step back from the table for the debate. Thank you. Are there any... Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora. I just wanted to speak to this briefly because it seems to me that this is exactly the kind of thing we should be rejecting, and it shows the process working. And I guess when we are thinking about the decisions we face, particularly on the 24th of September, and we're talking about areas that are genuinely constrained by infrastructure, here's a perfect example of somewhere constrained by infrastructure where we should be saying no. And that is not advice that we have for many of the other places that we are looking to intensify closer to the city. So I thought I'd just make that point. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor, and Deputy Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I respect the advice that's been given by Healthy Waters, and I completely understand the Takanini floodplain area. This is a little outside of it, but it does have downstream effects, and it's just a shame because it's right next to an urban area. It's in the urban area. It's exactly where we want housing for an area that is bereft of housing. Manurewa needs housing if no one else needs it. So it's a real shame for that. But we do not want to build in areas that are going to create people living or impacting other areas in floodplains. So totally get it, just a bit regretful about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. And I think you're right on the floodplain, but it is also that the double-edged sword with also the water care issues as well, which we have to contain. I think maybe if it was one, we could have found a solution at this point, but it will continue to go through the process, no doubt. All those in favour? Are there any opposition? Sorry, I'm getting to the end of a long day. Is there anyone opposed? No. Any abstentions? All good, thank you. Now we'll move to item 15. Erin is here.